shirt. Too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts. And I am too sexy for Milan, too sexy for Milan, New York and Japan.
Welcome back, everybody, to this week's edition of Doing It with Styles. I thank you for the support for the show and for our station. And like I say every week, for those people who aren't watching, damn, you're missing out. This week especially, we all have heard about reverse mortgages and the pros and cons. And I happen to run across someone who is an expert in the field. And that is, my guest today is Mr. Harlan Accola. He is the director of the reverse mortgage department of Movement Mortgage. And so I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Accola. So could you tell the audience kind of what is the basics of a reverse mortgage? What exactly is that?
You know, every once in a while I start talking to somebody and they say, well, that's interesting that you do that, but I have no idea what a reverse mortgage is. So that's a great place to start. A reverse mortgage, everybody knows what a forward mortgage is, a traditional mortgage. You pay money in for 15 years, 30 years, whatever the time period is. And then you gradually gain equity. You pay down your balance and you gain equity in your home. A reverse mortgage is just the reverse of that. You pay enough into your mortgage. And so at about age 62, for most people, there's some exceptions to that, but at age 62, you start taking money back out, just like you put money into Social Security. You put money into an IRA, a 401k, life insurance, whatever. And it's designed that you take money out at some point in the future. So everybody says that real estate is a good investment, but if you can't use it, what good does it do? And so what happens is as you build equity, I paid into my mortgage for about 40 years. And then when I turned 62, I eliminated my payment and started taking some money out by refinancing my forward mortgage, traditional mortgage, into a reverse mortgage. So it's just simply exactly what it says, a reverse mortgage where it pays you back instead of you paying into it. And you can't do it until you're older, and you can't do it until you have enough equity in your home.
Right. And so everyone that I've talked to, the key is taking money out. In other words, taking your equity out and not having to make any more payments on your house.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
what if I did not want to take any money out of my house? I just wanted, I got 10 years left on my mortgage, or 15 or 5 or whatever it is, and I just don't want to make any more payments. Is that a smart thing to do, or am I hurting myself by doing something like that?
Well, John, that's probably the most important question that more people should ask. But that's really what I did specifically. And that's what is so important is, I wrote about this in my book. I was snoring one night several years ago, and my wife elbowed me like really hard. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I just startled awake. And I said, over 62, 50% equity, still making a mortgage payment. And she said, you're sick. All you do is think about reverse mortgages, even in the middle of the night. And I said, well, that's top of mind for me. If you're over 62 and you've got more than 50% equity and you're still making a mortgage payment, why? You don't have to send money there anymore. So even if you can afford to, even if you think it'd be kind of cool to pay off your house, when I turned 62 on April 26th back in 2022, on the morning of April 27th, I was signing my reverse mortgage to take my payment from $2,500 down to $0. And so now I get this statement every month and it says, this is not a bill. And it's really cool because I owe like over $500,000 and it's not a bill. I don't have to pay it until a year after I'm dead. I mean, it's kind of crazy that more people don't look into that, because that's a huge advantage when you're going, I'm still working, but when you're retired or nearing retirement from 60 to 90 or 60 to 100, however long you're going to live, it is really cool to have an optional mortgage payment. So I can make a payment if I want. And if I don't want to, I don't have to. And that most people that turn 62 should take a look and say, do I want to keep sending this money in? I've got 10 years left. As you mentioned, I got 12 years left. I got 25 years left. If you've got enough equity in your house, you don't have to continue making that mortgage payment. Just stop it and use that money for other things. And if you have so much money that you don't need it, well, it's easy for you to make the payment, just go ahead and put it into an investment or give it to your kids or give it to a charity or whatever, because the only thing we know for sure is that we can't take it with you when you die.
Right. And you could earn interest on that money.
Well,
I'm saying if you took the money if you took that $2,500 a month that you were making for a mortgage payment and put it into an interest-bearing account or an IRA or something like that, you could actually make money off of that rather than spending the money on your mortgage. Am I wrong there?
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because back in 2022, when I stopped making my mortgage payment, I could afford to make a mortgage payment. I'm still working. I was used to making it. So I started sending that $2,500 a month to my financial advisor. And one of the things he did with some of those checks that I sent to him is he invested in this company that I didn't even know how to spell it. It was called NVIDIA. It turned out pretty good.
I know how to spell it, but I didn't know how to pronounce it. So.
Well, the bottom line is that I did extremely well there. And even though I used up some equity in my house by interest that I did not pay, I made more in my left pocket than what I lost in my right pocket.
Right.
And so by all means, it's not just about saving that cash flow, that money every month. In addition to that, you can earn on the other side of the equation, and your house will still go up in value whether you have a mortgage or not.
Right. And so that brings up the question, because you had mentioned you don't have to pay it off until a year after you've died. Now, I'm assuming that you're married and or you're sleeping with some woman, and so if you're married and your wife is on the deed or on the loan, and you pass away, is that time to pay that off, or does it also do both of you have to expire before that comes due?
Well, both of you have to expire, and yes, I am sleeping with a woman, and I am married, and it's the same woman. So that's less complicated that way.
Yeah.
And
it's cheaper.
And much cheaper. Yes, much cheaper. I've heard some stories the other way around, and it's expensive to have a couple, three of them. So the issue is, that's one of the reasons why people don't like reverse mortgages. They say, well, I love my wife and I don't want to get it kicked out after I die, because usually us men die first.
Right.
And so then the widow is left behind. And, a number of years ago, there were some really stupid men, John, and I know it's hard for you to imagine and me to imagine that there's stupid men out there, but these men were stupid. And they took out a reverse mortgage and they didn't include their wife as part of the deal. And when they died, their wives got foreclosed on and kicked out of the house.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I mean, what's wrong with you? Why did you do something like that? Well, they didn't know any better, or they were just being dumb about it and didn't think or didn't care or whatever. And so there was a class action lawsuit against FHA, Federal Housing Administration, and Wells Fargo that was selling reverse mortgages at the time. And it changed the rules forever to protect stupid men from their wives from stupid men that would do something like that. And so now my wife was underage when we did the reverse mortgage, not under 18, John. She was she was under 62. Anybody under 62 is underage.
Underage, right.
In our business. Well, she was only 59. So she would not qualify for a reverse mortgage by herself. But because I told her, you're so lucky that you're married to me, which you got to come up with reasons after 40 years. Right. But I said, because you're so lucky that you're married to me, you get to be part of this reverse mortgage. And if I die tomorrow, you can stay in the house for the rest of your life. So that rule,
payments. But
with no payments.
You still have to pay your taxes and any, you have to keep the house up. You have to maintain it. Right.
Just like you would if you had a forward mortgage or had no mortgage at all. You still have to pay the taxes, the insurance. And of course, you still have to do that because you don't lose ownership. I own the house with my wife. When I die, she owns the house. When we both die, the kids own the house as part of the trust. So all that ownership is never taken away. A lot of people think you lose ownership, and that's why they think the wife gets kicked out.
Right.
But she doesn't. So whether I go first or whether my wife goes first doesn't matter. We're guaranteed to live in the house with making no payments for the rest of our lives, whether it's together or separate. That is something that has kept many, many people away, John, and why I'm glad that I'm on your show to be able to explain that to your audience. Don't think that is the case, because it's not. The law is clear that you cannot do a reverse mortgage without including your younger wife or whoever your wife is who's under 62.
Or whoever's on the title. Is that correct?
That is correct. But
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
if you're not married, a younger person cannot be on the title with you. Like if you have a child who lives with
Right.
you, and an adult child, and they're in their 40s or whatever, you can't put them on. Only married people can be protected after the primary person passes away. So, and if you're not married at the time you do the mortgage, when you actually get married, then you better refinance and get the other person on or whatever, because you got to be married at the time the loan is done, and be married. If you get a divorce, then they're not protected either, because obviously they're not part of the marriage anymore. So you have to be married regardless of what the situation is.
Okay, so that brings up the question, your heirs, you have a reverse mortgage on your house, and both you and your wife have passed. Now, your heirs, blood, your son or daughter or whoever you might have, they actually inherit the house, or they can sell it, or they can, they're not, you're not taking their rights away by getting a reverse mortgage. Is that correct?
Well, that's so correct. Everybody thinks, well, one person told me, those reverse mortgages, they might not be so bad for the old people, but it really screws the kids.
Yeah.
You might as well just pass out bumper stickers that says we're spending our children's inheritance. There's some of those bumper stickers that we see in RVs and those big buses that people have in the campgrounds.
I've seen them. Yeah.
But the issue is when you think about it, you're always spending your children's inheritance.
Yeah.
When I ask people, well, is your goal to give the most money that you possibly can to your kids? And some people say, well, yeah, I want to make sure they get as much as they can. I want to give them a good start. And I said, well, think about it this way. Then the best time to die is right now, because you're spending money. And so you're spending their inheritance. The quicker you die, the more they get.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, we're consumers. We're always spending money. And if you're not working and building wealth anymore, you're using your wealth. And so the kids are going to get less. And if you've got kids that hope you die early so they can get a bigger inheritance, you should get some new heirs.
Yeah.
Because that's,
or you should spend it faster. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can enjoy it. But this is the way it works. If I've got $1 million in an IRA and I spend $400,000 and I die, the kids get the $600,000 that's left over.
Right.
If I have $1 million house and I use up $400,000 worth of equity with a reverse mortgage, and I pass away, they sell the house for $1 million, less fees or whatever, and they walk away with their $600,000, just like they would if I left them a savings account or a 401k. So of course the kids get less when you pass away, because you've used some of the money in your house. But if you don't use the house money, you're going to use money out of your IRA, or you're going to use money out of your 401k or your savings account or your life insurance contract, whatever it is. I have 4 sons and I love them, and I want to leave them a legacy. But John, I want to leave them a legacy while I'm alive. And so as soon as I did my reverse mortgage, I told the kids, guess what? Everybody, new rule in the Accola household, everybody gets a reverse mortgage vacation whenever they want to go. Only 2 rules. You got to plan it, and you got to take mom and I along, because we want the memories.
Yep.
And since that time, we've went to Iceland, we've went to Europe, we've went to Cabo, we've went to all kinds of places in the US, we've went to Hawaii, and we have some of the most fantastic memories. And that means there's going to be a little smaller inheritance, because we're starting to use some of the money that is in the house. So they're going to get a smaller inheritance, but they're okay with that. And they're excited about it. And my wife and I are excited about it, because we can spend more money with them while we're alive. And whatever money we don't spend, and if our house goes up to this value and we only owe this much, they get whatever's left. But then some people say, John, well, that's all well and good as long as values go up. But what if you live a good long time and you owe more than your house is worth? Now you've left a problem for your children. I would not sell reverse mortgages. I would not have a reverse mortgage. I wouldn't have done a reverse mortgage for anybody if this was not in place. There is FHA mortgage insurance, and it's called a non-recourse loan. And no matter what happens, they cannot owe a bill at the end. So if I die and my house is only worth $500,000 and I owe $600,000, they can walk away, take a tax deduction, and never have to pay a dime. But if the house is worth $1 million and I owe $600,000, they get the other $400,000. If it's good, the money goes to them. If it's bad, the bill goes to FHA. Guaranteed not to lose.
That is something I had no idea. I don't think anybody knew that.
Well, think about it. You're kind of in a town where there's a little bit of gambling that goes on.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was a casino that said, right, big sign across the front, if you gamble here, you are guaranteed not to lose. I mean, how many people would go in there? You're not guaranteed to win.
Not very many, because the line would be down the street and around.
Well, you're right there. Well,
but that's a good example. Yeah.
That's the deal with reverse mortgages. You're not guaranteed to win. You don't know what your house is going to be worth a year from now, say nothing about 20 years from now.
Right.
But we can guarantee you that you will not lose. And if it's upside down at the end, you're not liable for it. Your kids aren't liable for it. And you don't get kicked out when your house goes down in value and you owe the money up here. And
that's not an impossible scenario. We've seen it happen in our lifetimes. Happened
in 2008. Whole bunch of my clients, they owed this and their house is only worth this. In fact, one of my clients was in Las Vegas. He had a little $400,000 condo that went down to $200,000. And he owed $250 on it and had a little line of credit besides. And, he went and bought some of the condos in his complex because they had dropped so much in value. All those condos are worth $600,000 now. It was a good thing he did it. And so, but he didn't get kicked out of his condo. He was still able to stay there, even though he was upside down on his loan.
Right. So let's say, for example, you said you have 4 sons. Let's say one of the sons or all of them say, look, we want to keep the house. So they could refinance, pay off the reverse mortgage, and then they've still got whatever equity there might be left in the house.
Yes, within 30 days, excuse me, within 30 days, we go to the heirs and say, hey, what do you guys want to do with the house? Do you want to keep it?
Oh, you mean the mortgage company does within 30 days after your passing? They'll go to the kids and say, what do you want to do?
Yes, you own the house now because it's
so you don't have to, your kids don't have to be concerned about it because they're going to be screwed up because of your passing anyway. They're not going to remember that shit. So
exactly. And so we get in touch with them within the first 30 days. We don't show up at the funeral and ask for a check. There's plenty of time to work it out. So within 30 days, they tell us we want to sell or we want to keep it.
Right.
If they want to keep it, then we help them get a forward mortgage so that we can refinance it and put it in there. Maybe they want to turn it into an Airbnb. Maybe one of the grandkids want to buy it. But whatever. So if they want to refinance, we will help them with a regular mortgage. If the kids are now old enough, if the kids are in their 60s, we might do a reverse mortgage for one of the kids if they want to move into it. Usually that doesn't happen. 95% of the time, the kids sell the house because they just want the money. They don't want the house.
Sure. Yeah.
And besides that, I've got 4 sons. Which one's going to move in? None of them like my green countertops in the house. And so they don't like the house. So they're not going to move into the house, but they like the value. Right. So they're going to put it up for sale. They're going to sell it and divide it up 4 ways. But if it doesn't sell within the first 6 months, then you can get 2 3-month extensions. Okay. And then that allows up to a year if things are difficult in the market or whatever for the kids to be able to dispose of the property, get it cleaned out, when they're dealing with all of the grief situation and dividing stuff up and family dynamics and trusts and wills and probates and all that sort of thing. So it's it can be challenging. Some people say it was a mess at the end. Well, usually it's not a mess because of the reverse mortgage, John. It's a mess because the parents never put the will in place, the trust in place, and nobody knows what's going on. And so it was going to be a mess whether you had a reverse mortgage or not. So the greatest gift that people can give to us and to their kids is have an orderly thing of what the plan is when they die, because otherwise we're going to go through probate.
And would you suggest, if it's possible with a reverse mortgage, can you set up a family trust or a living trust that would include the reverse mortgage?
Yes, a lot of our clients have revocable or irrevocable trusts as part of their planning. Okay. And it's difficult to do any loan with an irrevocable trust except for a reverse mortgage, because we're dealing with that population that does trusts
Right.
to protect and to properly pass things on outside of probate. So we encourage people to work with attorneys that understand reverse mortgages so they can set their house up properly. In some states, it's just as easy as doing a transfer on death deed. And it just automatically transfers into the kids' names. But in bigger estates and more complicated estates, it's a good idea to have a trust. And we're happy to work around that scenario of how people put that together.
What about, for a while there, a lot of people were, and still are, homesteading their homes. Does that affect the reverse mortgage either way?
It does not.
Okay.
The only thing is, the only way that you can do a reverse mortgage if it's a primary residence. So you can't do a reverse mortgage on an investment property or on a second home. It's got to be on your primary residence, and usually the primary residence is homesteaded, and then it's covered from there. Now, sometimes I don't want to take lightly that sometimes the kids want the house. Sometimes it might be a house in on a lake, or it's a family compound in the mountains, or whatever. Well, then we work with financial advisors to get in place life insurance policies and other ways to take care of the reverse mortgage at the end, so that the kids can still keep the house and live in it without additional costs. So that's just part of planning. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use a reverse mortgage. It's just another tool, and you need another tool to make sure that that's taken care of at the end.
So with a reverse mortgage and the amount that, so I take out a reverse mortgage on my home, and let's say that it's worth, we talk about $1 million, it's worth $1 million, and I've got $600,000 in equity or whatever. I'm trying to figure out that 60-40 rule.
Right.
Does the amount of the reverse mortgage increase with time? Or when I take it out on day one, is it the same amount that the day that I pass away? Am I asking that question properly?
Right. That's a good question. So there's two answers to that question. It depends if you have your house paid off. If you have your house paid off completely, and it's what people call free and clear.
Right.
So if the house is paid off, then we set up a line of credit. And that line of credit is usually between 30 and 50% of the value of the house, depending upon your age and depending upon the current interest rate. So we'll set that up, and you say, well, I don't need the money today. That's fine. The line of credit starts at, let's say, 350,000, and then it goes up by currently about 7% every year. It keeps getting bigger and bigger because you haven't used the money yet. And so it just keeps getting bigger and more money is available.
Right.
Now, if you pull it all out, like I did to pay off an existing mortgage, then that's different. The balance will continue to go up, but it's going up to pay my interest.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not making a monthly check, and I use up about $30,000 a year in interest. So if I start the year owing $500,000, next year I owe $530,000. The year after that I owe $560,000, and so on. It's still going up, but it's not money coming to me. It's making my payment for me.
Gotcha.
And that's guaranteed. So it just depends if you have your house paid off or not paid off.
Gotcha.
And then every person's situation is a little bit different.
Of course.
But one of the things I want to be very clear about, John, is there's a lot of people, and maybe I should have even mentioned this early in your show, but there's a lot of people that think that this is just for people that are broke. There's kids right now that say, I hope my parents never need one of those. Well, when most adult children understand what the deal is, they're going to tell their parents to take it out right away, because it's actually going to be a benefit to them, because their mom and dad are going to have more time to spend on them, like I do with the reverse mortgage vacation, or they're not going to be a burden to their kids. They're going to be able to take care of their own health care. They're going to be able to take care of their own things and live their best lives, which most kids want their parents to do, without the kids having to contribute anything or worry about their parents' financial situation. There's a growing number of children, adult children, that are supporting their parents because their parents have fallen in hard times and have undersaved.
Absolutely. I think you make a good point there in that we shouldn't wait until we're 62 to start checking out a reverse mortgage, because the more we know about it, we can help our parents, navigate the whole situation if needed, and we understand it. So we know that what's going to happen, because I'm sure that there's a lot of kids, that see their parent going for this and they're thinking, oh no, I'm going to get screwed out of all of this money, when that's not the case. So by educating themselves, anyway,
Well, you're
that's
right.
my thought.
Well, it happens all the time. I mean, really, I always, whenever I'm working with a client, I always say, can we talk to your kids? Oh, we make the decisions with our kids. I said, I understand that. I'm not waiting for your kids to tell you what to do. But I want your kids to know, because sooner or later they're going to find out. And I
Sure.
want them to find out before you're dead.
Right.
Because when you're dead, they're going to get upset because they think that we took advantage of you or we tricked you into doing something,
Yeah.
which is not at all the case. And so I decided to do my reverse mortgage when I was in my 40s. And I said, okay, when I turn 62, I'm going to do a reverse mortgage. That changed, Steve, what I was going to do in my 40s with my financial planning, with how I was going to pay off my mortgage. I didn't make any extra payments, how much money I was putting into my investments, because I knew when 2022 rolled around that my payment was going to go to zero. So I was willing to put a lot more money into investments and spend money on an investment property because I knew that that was going to help my overall wealth.
Of
So
course.
people that are in their 30s and 40s and 50s who are not yet eligible for a reverse mortgage and won't be for another 10, 15, 20 years, they need to be looking at this right now as, how does this fit into my plan? They're making retirement plans. They're setting up IRAs in their 20s and 30s. Well, take a look at what you're going to do with your housing wealth. And there's a bunch of kids right now, kids, 20, 30-year-olds,
Yeah.
that, when you get to be our age, we start talking about 40-year-olds being kids. And we used to
Yeah.
think that was old. But
I'm
there's a
sorry.
lot.
Anybody under 60 is a kid for me.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about those 30, 40, 50-year-old kids, especially 30-year-olds are saying, I'm not going to buy a house because it's just a lot of messing around and it's cheaper to rent.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If I went to bought a house, if I went to bought that $50,000 house, $60,000 house back in 2000, back in 1981, when interest rates were 16%, I wouldn't be living in $1 million house with a reverse mortgage on it if I went to bought that first house in my 20s.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many kids that need to understand that you can build wealth. You're always paying somebody's mortgage, either the landlords or yourselves.
Yeah. Might
And
as well
so,
pay yours.
exactly, because you're the only one that gets the benefit out of it instead of giving it to the landlord. So you are 100% right. That is so important to understand. Begin with the end in mind is what one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Figure out where you want to be when you're in your 60s and 70s. And if my 40-year-old self and my 20-year-old self wouldn't have made some of those decisions, I wouldn't be here at 65 in a better position. And
Exactly.
so old people like you and I can tell people, hey, pay attention because you don't have to make the same mistakes that we made.
If you're lucky, yeah. So, what is the difference between a reverse mortgage and I think it's called a HELOC, an HELOC?
Yes, home
And
equity line of credit.
there you go. And what is the difference between the two, or is there? Or
Well, there sure is. All the rage right now, because all kinds of people have a 3% mortgage or a 2.75% mortgage or whatever, and their value has went up, and now they've got a $300,000 house that's worth $600,000, but they can't get a hold of that equity. So
Right.
they set up lines of credit to get a hold of that equity without paying off their 3% mortgage, which is smart
Yeah.
when you are under 62. However, big difference when you get to be 62. I would be foolish to do a HELOC, and I mean foolish, and I won't do it for people that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, because a HELOC is somewhat similar to a reverse mortgage that makes available equity that turns it into cash that you can use it.
Right.
But here's the deal. There are 3 reasons that you don't want a HELOC in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. Smart thing to do in your 40s, in your 30s, in your 50s. When you get to be in your 60s, here's the problem. Number one, you have to make a payment. You pull out 100,000, you got to pay back 150 or 200, depending upon how long it takes you to pay it back. Well, now you just
Right.
mortgage your retirement because you got to pay back more than what you took out. Secondly, that line can be called at any time and canceled if the market goes down, if you lose a spouse, if you get sick, if you lose your job, whatever the case may be. that can be canceled. Billions in lines of credit were canceled after 2008 crash. And the people didn't do anything wrong. Their house went down in value, but boom, their line of credit was gone. I had a $100,000 line of credit and it got canceled. And I called up and said, "What's the deal? Oh, we think the value of your house went down." I said, I lived in Wisconsin at the time. I said, it never went up. So it didn't go down. It just kind of stays the same.
Right.
And they laughed too. They made fun of me. But the issue is that lines of credit can be taken away, called canceled. A reverse mortgage line of credit is non-recourse, technical legal term, non-recourse. They cannot cancel it. They cannot take it back. We can never ask people to pay it off before they permanently move out of the house.
Okay.
No matter what.
And that was the other thing too. So it would become due and payable. A reverse mortgage would become due and payable upon transfer of title. In other words, if you sold the house or tried to transfer it into your kid's name or somebody else's, it then becomes due and payable just like any other.
Because you're not the owner anymore. Right. But as long as you're alive and as long as you live in the house and as long as you're taking care of the property taxes and insurance, just like you always have, you are guaranteed that line of credit is never taken away. There were people in California, their house burned down. It's nothing but ashes. And we still gave them an advance on their line of credit so they could afford to rent another property until their property got rebuilt.
Wow.
Yeah. A forward mortgage can't do that. And we do both because we do the other ones for the younger people. But when you're talking about people over 62, don't even think about doing a loan that could put you in a very difficult situation at one of the most vulnerable times of your life.
I got to tell you from my my personal experience, excuse me, with Movement Mortgage has been extremely positive. They helped me, or you helped me, not you personally, but Movement Mortgage helped me prevent making some mistakes that could have, come back to bite me later. And I can't say enough about the team that I worked with here in Nevada. And even today, like I said, I told you earlier, we're in the process of doing an IRRRL since the interest rates have come down from because I bought this house just a couple of years ago, right at my interest rate was 8.5%. And I really didn't want to go that high, but Jennifer sat me down and said, "Look, John, you're a veteran. So in 210 days, if the interest rates have dropped, you can refinance the house, drop your interest rates." So I've done that once already. And the interest rates are dropping again to where I can do it a second time. And my understanding is I can do that every 7 months if the interest rates are dropping enough to where it makes a difference and reduces my payment. And so you guys are just absolutely amazing. You're awesome. And I love dealing with you. And that's one of the reasons when I reached out to Jennifer, and then she sent me over to Michael, and Michael said, "Nope, here's the guy to talk to." And he was obviously right. So,
well, did you get me off this topic? And I'm not very smart, but as long as I stay on reverse mortgages, I'm come across as an expert. But I will kind of explain to your audience why I'm with Movement Mortgage, and our motto is we exist to love and value people. And that means that we take excellent care of every single client. A lot of people say that, but it even goes beyond that. We make sure that we have every imaginable product available, whether it's a veteran's loan, whether it's a first-time home buyer loan, whether it's a reverse mortgage, of course, for our seniors or anything else. But what we also do is we give away half of our profits, almost half of our profits every year to the people that are less fortunate than us. We call it impact lending. So far, we've given away over $400 million in the 15 years that we've been in business. We make a big difference for people that are less fortunate than us. And I'm proud to tell everybody that when you deal with us, it's not just that you get a good deal, but you're helping somebody else at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So could you just kind of, in a nutshell, what are the requirements to get a reverse mortgage?
Well, the most important thing is your age. So we card everybody. You don't get into the club unless you're at least 62 or you're married to somebody who's over 62. So age is the big factor. There are some states, Nevada is one of them, where you can get a reverse mortgage as early as 55, but that's a different product. and not the same as the FHA mortgage. Still a good product, still a safe product, but has more specific uses. It's more designed for jumbo properties. The second thing is you have to be able to afford to pay the taxes and the insurance. We don't want to get you into a loan and then you can't afford to pay the taxes and insurance, because then you will get foreclosed on. Because the only thing for sure is death and taxes, as they say. So you got to pay your real estate taxes. And that's an important part of the qualification is that you have actually paid your property taxes and insurance on time over the last 5 years. Specifically, we look very closely at the last 2 years, because if you can't afford to pay it, it's just going to be a short-lived scenario, and then we're going to be foreclosing, and that's not what we're in the business of doing. We do not do debt-to-income ratio. We do not do credit scores. Credit scores are very important, and debt-to-income ratio is very important when we're doing forward mortgages on our forward mortgage division. On reverse mortgages, no requirement of any specific credit score or debt-to-income ratio. We just look at, it's a manual underwrite. We just look at, do they have enough money to live and pay their other bills plus pay their taxes and insurance. So much easier to qualify. But the big thing is you have to have a significant amount of equity. You got to have more than 60% equity in your 60s. And that doesn't happen, obviously. Like in your situation, you just bought a house. It takes a while to get to that equity. So you got to have enough equity. We don't do a 90% loan to value on a reverse mortgage. So those three things, your age, your ability to repay the taxes and insurance, and enough equity in the house. I should mention, though, that there's another scenario. There's a lot of people that want to move. They don't like the house that they're in, but they've already got a cheap mortgage and they want to move to a different house. They want to downsize, upsize, whatever, mostly downsize at this point in life. We can also get them a reverse mortgage with a purchase. So we just had a client in Texas that wanted a $750,000 house, but they only had $500,000 out of their house up in Minnesota where they were moving from. They brought that $500,000 of equity down. We gave them $250,000, and they bought the $750,000 house close to their kids in Austin, and brought nothing more to closing other than the money that they got from their house in Minnesota, and they don't have a payment for the rest of their life. And they're happy. They're close to their grandkids. Their kids are happy because they got free babysitters, and they're happy because they don't have to deal with the snow in Minnesota anymore. So everybody won in that situation, but that's another aspect that a lot of people don't think about. Now, could they have taken money out of their investments and bought that house for cash? Yes, but then they would have had less fund money, less investment money, and they wouldn't have been as well off as they are now.
So what is one of the most important things that people should know if they are considering a reverse mortgage?
You know, that's an awesome question. You're an excellent interviewer, Steve, because that may be the most important question that you've asked during the entire time period. The most important question is, how does this relate to me? I can't tell you the number of people that have not enjoyed the privileges and the fun with reverse mortgages. The people that have not been able to take advantage of the best retirement because they heard that a reverse mortgage is a ripoff. They heard that their brother-in-law told them it was a bad idea. They were told that they were going to lose their house. Their wife was going to get kicked out. Their kids told them it wasn't a good idea. And they never really checked out. They didn't know what they were saying no to. So the most important question is to always ask someone that is qualified, that can explain it to them, that knows the facts. How would this work for me? I don't think I need it. I don't think I want it, but how would this work for me? And then incorporating that into their financial plan and finding out, will this make my retirement better? Will this be better for my kids? Will this be better for my spouse? And finding out, and that question, the most important question is the one that's never asked. The question that, just a minute, is there something that I am missing, something that I don't know? I've said no to a lot of things that I didn't know I was saying no to. And that was usually a mistake. So some things you should say no to, and it's evident that there's some things that are just not a good idea. But the question that people need to ask consistently is simply, how would this fit into my parents' situation? How would this fit into my situation? How would this fit into my sister's situation? And then be open to hearing the questions instead of making a snap judgment and saying, nope, I don't need one of those. without understanding just a minute, how does everything fit in from there?
Well, and it costs absolutely nothing to check it out, right?
Well,
And
that's the thing. I mean, and I have a book that I'd be happy to share with your listeners, to the first 50 callers that would ask or send you an email and ask for it. Just let me know, and I'll send them out a copy of my book. It's $20 on Amazon. It's free if I send it to them. I wrote the book specifically to help people understand what how simple it is to realize that this is a part of it. And I wrote it to people like me 20 years ago who thought these were a ripoff and didn't understand it. And it's just home equity and reverse mortgage is the Cinderella of the baby boomer retirement. It's written kind of like a fairy tale.
yeah,
And of course, Cinderella was not supposed to be at the ball. She was not supposed to be the main character. She was supposed to be back in the hovel, doing dishes and sweeping floors. And here she was, one of the main characters. We think in the retirement story that reverse mortgages are going to be the Cinderella that helps millions of people have a better retirement. And so that's what the story is about. And there's cool chapters like drugs, sex, and reverse mortgages, and the stepmother, fairy godmother. What about the stepsisters? It's just kind of a fun book, and I'd be happy to share it.
I would love to get a copy of that. I absolutely.
You get me your address and I'll send it out to you.
You got it, sir.
There's only one thing. I'm working on a new version, and you have to be an unpaid editor, and you have to tell me what I should do differently next time.
And I got to tell you up front, honest, all BS aside, I would not be in the house that I'm in right now if it wasn't for Jennifer Whitmer. If I had sat down and designed the house that I wanted to move into, this is it. And so between my real estate agent and Jennifer's the one that kicked it off, because I had her as a guest on one of the show where we were focusing on real estate and the real estate market here in Las Vegas. And the real estate agent that I was interviewing, we finished up and I said, hey, we didn't even scratch the surface. Would you come back? And he said, I'd love to. He said, would you like me to bring a mortgage broker with me? I go, oh, yeah. And so he brought Jennifer. And, we're going through, I'm asking all the questions. And after the show was over, I told her, I said, I'm because of some bad business deals and stuff, my credit was toast. I mean, I had given up hope of ever owning a house again. And so she said, well, let me run your credit, see what I could do, see if there's something I could do. Because as a vet, I still had my VA available. And so about a week and a half later, and she called me and she goes, yeah, okay, we can get you in a house. And if I had not asked the question, I would not be sitting here. And her and my real estate agent worked together. I mean, it's just, they were a great team, and I cannot say enough about you guys. And so when Jennifer said, hey, yeah, we can, get you somebody to talk about movement more, or about reverse mortgages, I can't thank you enough. And I know that we've given out a lot of great information today that I hope belays some of the fears and the stupidity revolving around. I've heard some crazy stuff. I mean, I have heard some serious crazy stuff about, reverse mortgages and what happens, and, how they came in the middle of the night and foreclosed on the house and threw the old people out. Just go ask somebody, Anyway, never mind. I'm sorry for getting off track. Harlan, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we get out there?
I think we've covered just about everything, but some people have said this is for the skeptics who still are. Yeah, but there's people say where there's smoke, there's fire. If I've heard enough bad things, there must be some bad stuff out there. Yes, there was. Prior to 1988, especially before Reagan put the FHA program into place, there are a bunch of rip-off deals out there.
Yep.
And there's still some of them out there. You need to deal with a reputable lender that is going to separate out what is good and what isn't. And there's all kinds of shared equity loans out there that look like reverse mortgages, but they're not. They're investors that are taking over part or all of your house, and you're eventually going to get kicked out. Yeah. So there are bad deals out there. And I'm so glad that you can vouch for Movement Mortgage and the values that we espouse, because when you're dealing with somebody that's honest, you're going to get the situation that you need, or you're going to be told not to do anything at all. And that is exactly the message that I can leave everybody with. Just because you've been burned in the past, just because somebody else has been, maybe it's because you're dealing with the wrong people. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's what my chapter is about: drug, sex, and reverse mortgages. Drugs can be good. They can save your life, or they can kill you with an overdose. Sex obviously can be good or evil. And of course, reverse mortgages can be good or bad. So can investments. You just got to make sure that you're dealing with the right team, the right people, as you just so eloquently described as you were working with Jennifer and her agent, because when you're dealing with the right people, great things happen.
Oh, and listen, I got to tell you this, and everybody out there, maybe 1 out of 10 times when I call Jennifer, she answers the phone. And if she doesn't, and I leave a message, I get a call back within 15, 20 minutes. And that, I think the first couple times I called and she answered, and I was like, okay, well, I was going to leave a message. Now what? Anyway, but they're great. They're great people out here. I'm really blessed to have found them and to be working with them. And you guys have just been terrific for me personally. So you have a fan. You've made me a fan.
That's good to hear. We exist to love and value people, and we're glad that you saw that love and value when we worked with you. And thanks for the opportunity to talk with you, to get this message out on the airwaves so that people understand that, hey, you can have a better retirement. Let's not just walk away from something that is outstretched to be able to make a difference.
Excellent. And if you have anything coming up in the future and you say, hey, John, we'd like to get the word out about this or about that or whatever, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will give you all the time you need and all the time you want. And
well, that sounds great. Well, there will be different things that pop up, and I'll certainly get in touch with you on that. And by the way, if there is anybody that just says, hey, I want to check things out further, they can obviously contact us through your contact information. But also they can just go to movement.com/reverse request. And just reverse request, movement.com/reverse request, and they'll get put their information in, and we'll give them a call back or send them whatever they need. And if they want to get a copy of my book, I'll make sure that I take care of that. So, but certainly let us know anybody that we can help, and that's a quick way. And my email that you've got is harlan.accola@movement.com, and happy to help anyone out from there.
Okay, great. Harlan, thank you again very much. And for all our viewers out there, like I said, if you're going to do it with style.
Nice work, John.